Hello, all you web users out there. We are here today with Ralph Swick, the COO of the World Wide Web Consortium, the W3C, which has won this year's GLIC Award. Congratulations and thank you for spending some time with us.
Oh, thank you, Arnold. On behalf of my colleagues on the staff of W3C and the many engineers and other people representing our member companies, we're glad that W3C has been recognized by Suffolk in this way.
Great. I was hoping you could give us a better sense of what the W3C does, the quiet giant. I want to let people know what it does. So I understand you facilitate the development of technical standards in different groups. Is that a fair statement?
Yes, that's right. The web has many pieces that all need to work together in harmony to make it work as well as it does. And our role is to get all the developers and the users of the web together to discuss how they want those pieces to work.
I see. And it's a royalty-free development process? I'm not sure I understand that part. Could you tell us what that is and how well that works?
Right. So the web standards that we develop define the interfaces between all the components of the web. So the fact that you can get a web browser from any manufacturer, from any developer of a web browser, and use that browser against any website, it doesn't come by accident. It comes because there's agreement on how all those pieces should work together, how they talk together, what functions should be provided in a browser such that a website author can know what could be represented to user. So there's a lot of work, a lot of discussion, a lot of technical thought that goes into describing how those pieces should work together. We don't then develop, the W3C doesn't develop the software itself. It's the people who are developing that software who come to our working groups and participate in our technical committees. So you referred to the royalty-free process. What that means, Tim Berners-Lee, who invented the web and is our director, wanted very much that the web is for everyone. Everyone should be able to use it. Any developer should be able to produce a component of the web, to use one of our web standards, and be able to implement that standard without having to pay a royalty fee to license some intellectual property from anyone. So one of our core tenets in W3C is that any of our members who participate in a technical working group to define one of our web standards agrees up front that if they have any patents that are necessary for implementing one of our standards, that they agree going into the process that they will license the use of that patent solely for the purpose of implementing the W3C standard. So it kind of creates a pool, a sharing pool that anybody who uses one of our standards can rely on. And that's worked very well.
Mm-hmm. Works very well, very smoothly, but a lot is going on behind the scenes.
Yeah, indeed. And it's actually been some of our larger members, our big patent holders, who were the proponents of creating this patent policy, because they recognize that creating a common platform on which everybody could build and innovate was to their interest, to their advantage as well, rather than having different kinds of webs for different browsers. So some of our largest patent holders were the ones who really encouraged the others to participate in this royalty-free patent standards development process.
Interesting. Now, what can we look forward to in the next version of HTML and the Open Web Platform?
Well, the Open Web Platform refers to a collection of technologies, of which HTML version 5 is the one that's under development now. The Open Web Platform is a collection of these technologies. And it includes JavaScript, which is actually not a W3C standard. It's done by a separate committee. But the Open Web Platform is developing more and more tools for being interactive, to build. When the web started, it was for sharing documents, and the documents didn't change very much. You couldn't interact with a document. So over time, we have web forms for providing information. So the web platform becomes more interactive. There's more kinds of rich media, audio and visual, and other kinds of media that people want to include in web documents and HTML documents. And then, of course, as clever people figure out how to use these building blocks in new ways, they'll want us to improve certain characteristics of performance or user interface capability, gesture input, wave your hands at your screen, wave your hands over your tablet. There's no end to the inventiveness and creativeness of developers. So best I can say is stay tuned, and we'll see what HTML6 looks like.
Wow, okay, sounds exciting. How about social media? Is that part of the open web platform?
Absolutely. Well, the technologies to support social media applications, certainly. A lot of interest in mechanisms for people to protect the use of their data, privacy of their data when they put it into social media sites. Communication, real-time communication between users using the web. So between web browsers, real-time communication mechanism to use it as an interactive communications tool. And so there's social media is a particular area of upcoming interest for us, and one of the challenges in the social platforms is that if you want to move your data from one social media site to another, it's a challenge right now. They kind of have you wired in, and we would like there to be an agreement on ways to interchange data between social sites, or if you choose to move your information from one site to another, there's a standard data format for doing that. And so we believe that the community wants that, and we're proposing to create technical committees to look into that.
So how about hardware? Are we going to have smart coffee cups and smart everything, smart watches, iWatches or whatever, smart watches? Is every object going to have its own URL and be smart in some way?
Well, certainly the fundamental naming mechanism of the web address, the URL, was designed by Tim from the start to be able to talk about any physical object or any concept that human beings would want to be able to talk about. So it was important that the web not have kind of built-in limits. Whether every coffee cup needs to have a web address or not, well, that'll depend upon what things people want to say about the coffee cup. I could imagine, for example, that someday, my teacup would be able to report the how much was left, and what the temperature was in there, and what kind of meeting I was in, and be able to inform the tea kettle, you better start heating up another batch of water for Ralph, or maybe could hold off for a half hour because he's probably not going to be able to get out of that interview soon enough. So whether the coffee cup will prove useful to be saying that kind of information, we'll see.
I see. So technically feasible, socially desirable, that's another question.
Exactly, and there's no end to human creativity. The first person to create a coffee cup which advertises the temperature and level of its content and puts that raw data out on the web. It doesn't necessarily have to build the application that uses the data, but puts that raw data out on the web for somebody else to think of clever ways to use. The market will take advantage of those kind of innovations and show us things that we didn't conceive of today. So.
Wow. So we're not going to just have hyperlinked documents, but hyperlinked data sources in a very standardized way.
Well, we talk about the web of things, and inanimate objects should be able to be referenced on the web, or, well, I said inanimate, but if they publish information about themselves, maybe they're a little bit more animate than just sitting there. But there'll be lots of innovative uses of this kind of thing, and whether it's an active thing that publishes the state of its contents, or simply has a unique identifier so that I can distinguish this coffee cup from that coffee cup, and talk about this one as opposed to all coffee cups that look like that. I think there's reasons to think both could be useful.
Okay. Wow. Very interesting. Very interesting. And this, do you think this would spread rapidly, the adoption of linked object sensors, I guess, all kinds of these new technically feasible things? Do you think people are going to go for that? Users are going to be excited by it? Or are they going to be scared of it? Or what do you think?
I think it all depends upon what applications are developed that take advantage of either being able to refer to a specific coffee cup or know the temperature of the contents of a specific coffee cup. A recent example of the benefit of publishing this kind of raw data. So buses, the T buses are on the web now. Right? So the MBTA publishes real-time information about the location of buses and trains, and they created a contest for developers out there to see what could you do with this data. And so now we're the beneficiaries of all kinds of applications that tell us when the next red line will arrive, or how long we have to wait for a particular bus. And it's all because the people who have the data were willing to put it out on the web and make the raw data available for application developers to use. And so if your coffee cup advertises the temperature of your coffee, somebody will figure out a clever way to use that, and whether that proves to be of social value or not, well, we'll see.
I see. Very interesting. And open and collaborative. It sounds like a nice process. You're behind this, a very good process.
And that's what the W3C is about: open, collaborative, consensus building around standards.
Huh. Okay. So, not to belabor the point about coffee cups, but how do you know how do you know how to develop standards or facilitate the leading of that process when you don't know what the objects or devices or what the user interfaces will be, or what users' needs will be in the future? How do you make your standards open-ended?
Well, it's a very interesting question, and I think there's as much art to it as there is science. Principally at the level that W3C works at, developers will come and say, we need the mechanisms of a web browser to be able to work on very tiny screens as well as very large screens. And they may or may not tell us what application they have for a very tiny screen, whether it has lots of pixels or only a few pixels. But we recognize that the web should scale to a range of screen sizes, a range of network connectivity, network bandwidth. So as much as possible, we make our specifications generalized, and we leave enhancement points so that somebody can start with the specification the way it is, but then extend it a little bit for some new device. And I don't expect that we can predict every device that will come to market, but already we have interest from the TV set manufacturers to integrate the web with TV sets. So that's a new kind of device that wasn't anticipated 25 years ago for being something that one would use the web and internet on. But at the end of the day, I think there's as much art to defining standards that will be useful for whatever devices we invent or are invented 10 years from now.
I see. So the art and science of open-ended standard facilitation.
Exactly.
Okay. Wow. It's very, very interesting.
And of course, the more people we get involved in the conversation, the more users we get, the more really visionary thinkers we get involved in the conversations as we're developing the standard, the greater the likelihood that some possibility will have been anticipated in the design and either accounted for in this version of the standard, or at least recognized as something for the next version of the standard to consider.
Okay. You've described some technologies as horizontal as opposed to vertical, things like internationalization, security, privacy, accessibility. Is it horizontal because it cuts across so many different things? Well, is it an easier set of problems to solve? Is it just easier to understand them? Could you talk to us about horizontal technologies?
Sure. We use that term to refer to a set of things which we believe are important for every web component to pay attention to. So security, privacy, internationalization, accessibility for people with disabilities, every specification that we write, every standard we write should account for those things in some way. And we call them horizontal because they cut across all standards, but also we create technical working groups to focus on those specific areas because we recognize the expertise. Each standard will have a set of people who are expert in components of it. So the expertise in these horizontal areas wouldn't necessarily be present for every developer of a new user interface mechanism for a browser. So we create these horizontal technical working groups to help coordinate with and work with all of the other working groups to make sure that accessibility for people with disabilities, security, internationalization for non-US ASCII character sets, those are represented and understood and considered in the design of development of any other web standard. So it's not that they're easier, but they're universal and require the expertise required to understand them can be collected and used across all working groups.
I see. So it's a different kind of expertise that cuts across the silos, but it's no less challenging.
Exactly. Certainly no less challenging.
I see. Okay. All right. Where do web ideas come from? The new ideas? Is it from your staff? Is it? Where do these things come from?
Well, they come from all over the place. W3C is unique among standards organizations that we do have a full-time technical staff that facilitates the conversation, helps resolve technical differences of opinion. We're very much consensus-based. So some of the ideas will come from our staff. But we're 70 people amongst, I think the latest number is 1,600 participants, representatives of our members who participate in working groups. So they bring ideas, members bring ideas. We're constantly watching to see what innovations are put on the web for things that could become standards in the future. Often a new innovation needs to incubate for a little while before we're confident that we, the community, understands it well enough that a common standard is appropriate in that area. So ideas come from all over the place. We keep our eyes and ears and maybe nose and sense of touch open to new ideas wherever they are.
Interesting. I like idea incubation, smart, open-minded people incubating ideas and then helping them.
Right. Well, that's what the web
standardize.
is. The web is an incubator of ideas, and part of our mission is to make the components, make the building blocks of the web easily adaptable and assemblable in different ways, so that new ideas, new innovations can be built on top of the stuff that's out there now. So that's part of what openness means too.
Mm-hmm. Makes sense. Makes sense. So the latest statistic I saw was that there are over 1 trillion unique URLs. And if we have approximately 7.1 billion people in the world, that's 141 unique URLs per person, every man, woman, and child. Back in 1989, when the web was really taking off, did the W3C have any idea just how huge, how ubiquitous the phenomenon would be?
Well, Tim Berners-Lee, who invented the web, he's a very visionary person. I'm sure absolutely he understood that the things we might want to talk about, the names, the URL, web address. There's an unlimited set of things we might want to give names to and talk about. So he very deliberately designed a web addressing mechanism, a web naming scheme that didn't have a finite limit to it, so that when we come up with a new concept, tablet referring to a computer rather than referring to a bit of stone, those are different concepts. They happen to use the same name, and in human language, the fact that we spelled the name the same way sometimes leads to misunderstandings. So Tim designed a naming mechanism that allows us to distinguish between a stone tablet and a computer tablet. And I'm sure that humans haven't yet come up with all the concepts we might want to talk about. So the fact that there's a trillion now, I don't know whether 25 years ago when the web was invented that anybody would have conceived of us needing to talk about a trillion things, but certainly the machinery was designed to be able to do that.
That's a good thing Tim had conceptualized this mechanism that was unique, well, elegant and open-ended, so that it could scale so nicely.
Exactly. Well, it's very important, and this has led to some very deep philosophical discussions amongst the web designers, philosophy and engineering together. But does a web name, a web address, or URL is the technical term, does that refer to a document that one retrieves off the web only, or can it refer to other things? Can it refer to a coffee cup, or can it refer to the steering wheel on my car? Can it refer to an abstract concept? And the answer is it's meant to be able to do all of those things. So we want to be able to talk about an abstract concept and have a conversation about it and try to develop an understanding of how we use that concept in our daily lives, and that should have a web address so that we can talk about it and distinguish it from other concepts that may be similar but not identical. So a URL doesn't just mean a document that I fetch or my browser fetches and is presented to me on the screen of my mobile phone.
This has gotten very philosophical.
Sorry about that.
No, fascinating, absolutely fascinating. You're a lot of good engineers and philosophers too, apparently. Thank you, all you web users out there, for checking in, and really appreciate you spending some time with us to give a better sense of your organization and what you guys do. Very, very important global impact, really, the kind of work you've done.
The web has certainly made a huge difference to global cooperation and communication, and I wonder if Tim envisioned that. Talking about what Tim may envision, I wonder if he envisioned the impact that it has had. And certainly, I know he's very, very proud of it, and we're proud and pleased that Suffolk University has recognized what we've been able to do for the web. So thank you.
Well, thank you for spending time with us.